Have you ever noticed that some people carry a weight? No one else can see a heaviness that lives not in their body, but in the way they hesitate before speaking, in the way they flinch when someone raises their voice, in the way they shrink, even in rooms where they are safe. It starts early, before you even have words for it. You're sitting in a house that looks normal from the outside, clean windows, a front door that opens and closes like any other, but inside something is always slightly off. Maybe it's the parent who was there physically, but somewhere else entirely. Nobody handed it to you and said, "Here, take this, you'll need it for the rest of your life." It just became part of you, like the way your bones grew without you asking them to. And now you're older, and you keep finding it in the strangest places. In the way you panic when someone goes quiet. In the way you over-explain yourself, as if your existence needs a defense. In the way love has always felt, just slightly out of reach. Here's what nobody tells you about childhood wounds. They don't stay in childhood. They follow you silently. Like a shadow you forgot you were casting. Psychologists call this emotional It's the process by which our earliest experiences become the template through which we see every experience that follows in everyday life. This looks like a 30-year-old woman who still feels like a child when her boss raises his voice, or a man who cannot accept a compliment without immediately wondering what the other person wants from him. The wound didn't happen last week, but your nervous system doesn't know that. Research from the Journal of Developmental Psychology found that children who grow up in emotionally unpredictable environments develop hypervigilant nervous systems by age 7. Psychologists use this term to describe a state of constant internal alertness, a low-level hum of anxiety that never fully turns off. In everyday life, this looks like scanning every room you enter for danger, reading every expression on every face, preparing for the worst, even when the present moment gives you no reason to. Your brain learned to do this to protect you. The problem is it never got the memo that the danger has passed. Bessel van der Kolk, one of the world's leading trauma researchers, wrote in his landmark work that the body keeps the score. He meant that trauma doesn't live in memory alone. It lives in your chest, in the tightness of your shoulders, in the way you stop breathing when conflict enters the room. Your past isn't just a story you tell, it's a physical experience you relive every single day. And here's where it gets interesting. Most people think breaking free from the past means forgetting it, moving on, getting over it, but that's not how the mind works. You cannot outrun a pattern you haven't named. You cannot heal a wound you're still pretending isn't there. So, what does this actually look like in your life? You might struggle to trust people not because they've given you a reason, but because your history has given you every reason. You might find yourself drawn to people who feel familiar, people who recreate the same dynamics you grew up in, the push and pull, the hot and cold, the love that comes with conditions attached, not because you don't know better, but because familiar feels like home, even when home was never safe. You might shrink yourself in relationships, make yourself smaller, quieter, easier to love. Because somewhere along the way you learned that your full self, your loud self, your needy self, your angry self was too much. Psychologists call this the fawn response. It's one of 4 trauma responses alongside fight, flight, and freeze. The fawn response is when you learn to survive by pleasing, by appeasing, by becoming whatever the room needs you to be. A study published in the Journal of Trauma and Dissociation found that individuals who developed fawn responses in childhood were significantly more likely to struggle with identity formation in adulthood. In other words, when you spend your whole childhood becoming what others need, you reach adulthood with no idea who you actually are. Think about that for a moment. You might have built an entire life, a career, a personality, a reputation around a version of yourself that was built for survival, not for living. We're halfway through something important here, because this is the part where most people stop. This is where it gets uncomfortable, where the mirror shows something you'd rather not see. But here's the truth. Recognizing this pattern is not a reason to feel broken. It's the first evidence that you are starting to see clearly. There's a paradox at the center of all of this. Carl Jung once wrote that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. He meant that the patterns running in the background of your mind, the ones installed before you, had the language to question. Them will keep repeating quietly, invisibly in every new chapter of your life, unless you see them. The child who learned to be invisible becomes the adult who feels unseen and doesn't understand why. The child who learned that love is conditional becomes the adult who performs for approval in every room they enter. The child who learned that conflict means danger becomes the adult who avoids hard conversations who lets resentment build quietly behind a smile, who one day wakes up and doesn't recognize their own life. This is not your fault, but it is your pattern, and patterns, once seen, can be changed. Healing from your past doesn't look like what the internet wants to sell you. It's not a morning routine or a journal prompt or a 7-step plan. It begins with something quieter than that. It begins with witnessing the child you were, with honesty and without shame, seeing the strategies they used to survive and understanding they were brilliant strategies for a child with no other options. The hypervigilance that exhausts you now kept you safe. Then the fawn response that makes you disappear in relationships once made you lovable in a home where love was unpredictable. You didn't develop these patterns because something was wrong with you. You developed them because something was wrong around you, and there is a difference, a profound difference. Research from Harvard's Center on the Developing Child shows that the brain retains neuroplasticity well into adulthood, meaning the patterns installed in childhood are not permanent. They are not your destiny. New experiences, new relationships, new ways of being witnessed and held can literally rewire the pathways your early life carved. You are not a finished product of your past. You are a living, breathing, changing human being. And the most radical thing you can do is stop letting a frightened child make decisions for your adult life, not by abandoning that child, but by finally, gently becoming the adult they always needed. Remember that person I described at the beginning, carrying a weight no one else could see, flinching in safe rooms, shrinking in spaces where they deserved to expand? That doesn't have to be the rest of your story. The patterns are real. The wounds are real. But so is your capacity to see them clearly and slowly, tenderly begin to choose differently. You didn't choose your past, but you are still here. And here is exactly where freedom begins. Drop a comment if any part of this felt like it was written for you. What's the one pattern you recognized in yourself? Today, I genuinely want to know.